Merci Odette, merci à Hervé Georgelin et à Odette et à l'École française d'Athènes pour cette invitation. Euh, J'avais convenu, étant donné que je suis français, qu'on est à l'École française d'Athènes, de parler en français par nationalisme français, mais il s'avère que la moitié des participants sont strictement anglophones et je vais switcher en anglais si l'École française d'Athènes m'autorise à blasphémer en anglais plutôt qu'en français. So I was just saying that I will do it in English for the non-speakers of the most important language in the world, French. So we'll do it in English now. And very quickly, I will end by speaking about Greece and Athens, but I will take a long detour before getting there. And as Odette said a couple minutes before, we published a book on the so-called Auschwitz album, which is an analysis of a very important for the Holocaust story set of photos, and I'll speak about it in a few minutes, but more broadly, the goal of this book is not only to analyze those 200 or so photos, but it's a reflection about the way we deal with images in history, and not only in Holocaust history. But when we deal with the Holocaust or the Second World War, we have something very specific, which is unique. It's the importance of photographies. Every single person, to say so, thinks he or she knows the Holocaust because she knows or he knows those photos. Basically, this is an Holocaust photo, right? Sorry, it's not an Holocaust photo. This is a concentration camp photo. It has almost nothing to do with the Holocaust. And I can keep on going with all the other photos that you might know, like those ones or those ones. And this one is quite famous because it's one of the most displayed over the world. But if you look carefully at the other photo, you can see it's written in Spanish. It's in Mauthausen, and the anti-fascist Spaniards are thanking the Allies to have liberated them. Why am I showing you those photos? Because that's the way people thought they understood the Holocaust since 1945. Basically, the Allies found the camp and the horrors of the camps, for sure, and thought because there were a few Jews among those people, the Nazis sent the Jews to the concentration camps to deal with them, which is not true. The few Jews that are on those photos, this one is supposed to have among the men Elie Wiesel. So we don't know if he's really there, but that's the claim. Those Jews are the lucky one which were selected in Auschwitz and were not killed immediately. To put it clearly, concentration camps have nothing to do with the Holocaust. This is an Holocaust photo, and that's the Holocaust. So this place is not very well known except for a few people. It's called Ponar or Panerai or Ponari. It's near Vilnius, and that's the place where 80,000 Jews from the area, the capital, but also other surrounding cities, were shot and killed. And that's what the Red Army found in 1944. That's the Holocaust, the killing of the Jews. And we could keep on going on that topic, but basically, with the Second World War and the Holocaust, we have this huge problem. Photos brought knowledge, which is untrue also. And when we deal with Holocaust photos, this is the most famous photo of the Holocaust. But, and that's my point today, and that's the point of the book we wrote with Stefan Odler and Christoph Kreutzmüller, is to understand that we have to read photos. And I'm using the word read on purpose. And I could emphasize on that, but we must learn how to read photos, because every single one of you knows this photo. The problem is you don't see what there's to see in this photo, and I'll show it to you quickly. Whoever noticed this little girl defying the SS photographer? We all know the frightened boy, and he ought to be frightened. Is the symbol of the Holocaust, a frightened little Jew. Behind him, there's a little Jewish girl, frightened as hell also, but she's showing her tongue to the photographer. She's defying him. It's defiance. The problem is, that's the way we see the Holocaust. We want a victim, he fits the victim. The little girl behind him doesn't look like the way we want to see victims. So, for decades, no one noticed this girl. And we could keep on. If you look at this photo, there's plenty of things to speak about. For instance, the guy there has a SD patch, SD meaning Sicherheitsdienst, the German police. We have his name. I'm not gonna go too deep on that. He's the bodyguard of Jürgen Stroop, the SS general leading the operation against the ghetto. We can see him on plenty of the photos. Near Stroop is from the Sicherheitsdienst of Warsaw, but seeing him on this photo means something. If he's there on the photo, as is the bodyguard of Stroop, it means that Stroop is nearby, because there's no other reason this guy would be there. So if he's there, Stroop is somewhere, and where can it be Stroop? Probably where Blöcher, it's his name, is watching, meaning just by the photographer. And we could keep on and on, so you can see more thoroughly the badge, but you can also see that a few people are wearing those armbands, and this is very important. In Western Europe, it's known that Jews were marked with yellow stars. That's the way in Western Europe, I mean, in France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in few other countries too. I guess in former Yugoslavia, it was also the case, etc. Yellow star. So that's and in Germany, the first major book about the Holocaust was called, if I translate it in English, The Yellow Star. There's no yellow star in the Warsaw Ghetto. They were wearing this armband white with a blue star. So according to the way where you are living, in former countries where the Holocaust occurred, you see the Holocaust through the eyes of what happened in your place. And you will speak about the yellow star watching this photo. There are no yellow stars on those photos. Now, if we keep on the problems of photos, those are two photos of fine, old, and the old is important, the Germans in the Wehrmacht. In fact, they are member of a police battalion, the most famous one, the 101 Police Battalion. Those photos were found 10 years ago. And I mean, they're fine. Do you see any violence on those photos? Hardly, I mean, except for the uniforms and the weapons, a few rifles and pistols. And those two photos are a perfect example of a major problem. On the back of the photos, there are captions of the owner of the photos, who is on the photos. And you can see the first caption: this barn was full of Jews and bandits, the shock troop after the fight. The second states that those are prisoners. So basically, without that, We cannot understand this, and we would hardly see that there's a corpse lying behind the feet of one of the soldiers. And same thing there, those are not cyclists, tourists, those are prisoners. To put it shortly, a photo doesn't say anything by itself. You have to understand the context and you have to analyze it. This is the context which allows us to understand what we see. And that's the main problem with photos. We don't understand what we see. I'll just use, with a few other photos on the same topic, another major example. You all know this kind of photos. And for Greece, if we speak about Greece, there are plenty of photos of destruction by the German army and the SS of Greek villages. It's not even the Holocaust, it's the killing of Greeks as reprisals. Those photos are a major problem. Should we display the killing of people, crime, to the public? Would you show photos of rape in a museum? The answer would be no. And I mean, everybody will agree. So why are we used to show assassinations like it's normal? It's not normal. So there's an historical reason. In 1945, the Allies found the photos, they found the killing grounds, they found the concentration camps, and they used the photos and the films they made and the photos they found as a way to show the reality of Nazi violence. It was a way to show what happened. But since then, we kept on using that because we know them, we are used to them, so we keep on showing them. As an historian, do I need to see that to know it happened? Obviously not. We have documents, archives, testimonies. An archaeologist would say we can dig in the ground and found all the elements and so on. So what is the purpose of showing those photos? To show that Germans behave badly? I think we know that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, in this photo, there's one major information that you will never find in any archive, in any testimony. And this information is a major one. And again, the problem is we don't know what we see. On this photo, you can see a group of soldiers, but they're wearing leisure clothes, meaning they have nothing to do with the killing. They just came to watch what was going on. This is the main information here. So this photo, as others, is displayed on every museum in the world, printed in books, used as a way to show Nazi violence, okay? But we don't see the main information. It took decades to German historians to demonstrate how much German population knew about the Holocaust. Those guys watching just came to watch by themselves. And it's not one photo. Same thing goes here. What we see is on the foreground. But on the background, you have dozens of spectators that just came watching the killing. That's it. And I'll end with this one, which is the most famous of the killings. It's named The Last Jew of Vinica. It happened a few months ago. An American historian, Jürgen Matthaus, published a piece on that. It's not the last Jew of Vinica. It's not in Vinica. It's in Berdichev. And that's one of the first killings in Berdichev in the summer of 1941. So you see, we don't even know what we see. Now, this photo is very interesting for many reasons. One being, you can see clearly any single uniform. And you can see that except for the killer who is a member of the Einsatzgruppe and the SD, you don't have any other same uniform. You have behind the pistol, the black uniform is a Panzer soldier. You have a musician. You have a musician, the third on the left, and so on. They are not coming from any unit linked to the killing. They just came to watch. And that's the main thing. It's not the main thing. In fact, there's another main thing that we all see and don't understand because we have to think about it. If we see those photos, this one, or this one, or this one, it means something. Those photos were taken to be displayed to other people in Germany, to the family, to friends, to comrades, whatever. You have here, under your eyes, the way information was spread all over Germany. So about what did the German knew? Well, they knew pretty well some aspect of the killings. Why? Because we have the photos and they saw those photos or others. And I can assert that with this last killing photo, 2 partisans in Belarus. If you look carefully, half of all the Germans on this photo are taking a picture. So what we see here was picture at least 10 times, 9, 8 on the, you can see 8 cameras, plus the photo we see, it's 9, there are probably others, but you see the way they are dealing with violence. So all this allows part of the work that we did on that, which is the Auschwitz album, and that's one of the photos of the Auschwitz album. I'll come to the album in a few minutes, but here we have a perfect example. Because, again, this photo is one of the most used all over the world, in France, in the United States, in Yad Vashem, I mean, in Germany, to explain the Holocaust, and especially Auschwitz, and Auschwitz is directly linked also to Greece. But basically, you will all agree that it's a photo in the concentration camp of Birkenau, right? The problem is it's not in the concentration camp of Birkenau. And that's the major problem again, because we don't read photos. If you look carefully at this photo, the photo says it. We think we know because we were students, or we read and we learned it's Birkenau, or to make it simple, it's Auschwitz. We know it, and that's the entrance of Auschwitz, which it's not. It was never the entrance of Auschwitz or Auschwitz-Birkenau. The photo says something else, and if we read the photo, we understand what we see. It's a railway station. It's stuck in 2 parts of the camp. You can see one part of the camp on one side. On the other side, it's not on the photo, but you can see that the camp is on the other side. You can see the barbed wire fence, and it's turned, I'll show you later, this way, meaning that the prisoners are in the camp. When you stand on the railway station, you're just on a railway station. The main watchtower is not the entrance of the camp. When you stand there, you cannot enter in the camp, either the woman lager or the B2 part where you have 70 to 80,000 prisoners. The only thing you can do there is to get out from the trains and either go directly to the gas chambers, which are directly connected to the railway station, or take a street called the Lagerstrasse, which leads you to the entrance of the camp. And that's here the main topic. If we look carefully at the picture, this picture is saying something clear. This is a railway station, a very special one, but it's a railway station. You can see the tracks, the train, the people who came with this train standing on a platform. That's the definition of a railway station. And you can see and understand that the watchtower is the entrance of this railway station. That's it. But as we think we know, as we were explained this way, we cannot understand what we see. And that's the most absurd thing photos are thought to be simple to understand. I'm displaying you photos you will understand, while it's exactly the opposite. And I could go through the example of the alphabet, which is coming from the alphabet the Latin alphabet is coming from the Greek alphabet, which is coming from the Semitic alphabets, Phoenicians, Hebrew, and at the beginning, each letter, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, is a drawing showing the word. Aleph, I don't know the word in English, a bull, it's the head of a bull. Bet, it's a house, and it's the drawing of a house. We forgot that the alphabet letters are very simple images, and we have to learn to read simple images. So why very complex images should be easier than small drawings? It's absurd if you put it this way. So it shows you how much we have to learn about images. Now, I was asked, and it's just an ad to show this book, which is in French and in English. In German, it will be in English soon. It has been translated. But we used this album, and you can see the album, known as the Auschwitz album, but it's not the Auschwitz album because you have plenty of albums coming from Auschwitz. It's an album from Auschwitz, known also under the name Lili Jacob album, because it's the name of a Jewish survivor who found the album and recognized a few people in the album, and it ought to be called the Lili Jacob album. So showing you the album shows something obvious, and I'm going to state a lot of obvious things that no one thought about before we started to work on this analysis of the album. When you deal with an album, you choose photos rather than you select, because select is linked to something else there. You choose photos, you display them in an order you choose, etc., etc. I'm stating the obvious. The problem is no one for 5 decades ever thought about it. For 5 decades, since Serge Klarsfeld found Lili Jacob and convinced her to give the album to Yad Vashem, the idea for every single one, including me, and I was working on Auschwitz for 15 years before I understood my mistake, was it's an album and it's telling the story of one transport which arrived on said day. But it's absurd when you are dealing with an album, you are choosing photos and you choose the order. Does it mean that all the photos were taken on the same day? No. We decided that everything was taken on the same day. So that's the album, and the only reliable information is Umsiedlung der Juden aus Ungarn, reimplantation of the Jews from Hungary. And then you turn the pages, and I was saying, yeah, everything was taken the same day. It's interesting, fascinating, to speak like an American. Until Christoph Kreutzmüller told me one day there's a problem. Those photos could not have been taken the same day. So he didn't tell me why. I had to find myself, and I found myself another way to prove it. He found other things at the beginning, but it's quite obvious. So those 2 photos are one on page 8, the other one on page 11. So they are not too far away. And I was seeing them for almost 15 years. I was working on Auschwitz. I knew Auschwitz perfectly. And I never noticed that. So you have the so-called ramp, the railway station. You can see it from above, and you can see the watchtower and the gas chamber called crematorium 2. So basically, it means that the photographer, an SS, was standing on the middle, on the center of the ramp, took one picture this way and the other way, and that's it. But there's a main problem here. The ramp has 3 tracks, 1, 2, 3. And the train on this photo is on track 3. Why is he on track 2 on the other photo? Why? Either the train jumped from one track to the other, which is impossible. So the other reason, it's simple. It wasn't taken on the same day. And we know it's almost at the same time because of the shadows. So when you combine everything, you can understand those photos were taken on various days. And to show you quickly, on those 4 pages I just show you, you have this series, 8 photos taken on one transport. Then you have on page 9, 3 photos taken on another day, 2 photos on page 11, another day again, and the last one, a 4th transport. When we finished analyzing the album, only on the number of series, we had a dozen series, plus various isolated photos that we cannot link to series, but at least we have a dozen transport photographed. So from one day, we are now in 12 days, and the day was fixed according to various works before on the 26th of May, 1944, when we finished analyzing, and I'll show you how we could date a few things. We had a dozen series taken between the 16th of May and the 2nd of August, 1944. It has nothing to do, which is gratifying for us, and that's the main point when you are working. So I'll show you one series and the way we reconstructed them. So those are the 2 photos which were in blue there. It's the beginning of a selection. And if you look carefully, you can find faces. So for instance, this woman, which is on other photos, which are far away in the album, photo 64, for instance, you can find her standing during the selection. But you can say, yeah, we don't see her clearly, so it's not enough. But yes, it's enough because we have another woman and so on and so on. We identified plenty of faces, which allows us to link the 2 first photos to 12 other photos, 6 of men, 6 of women and children walking to the gas chambers. So it was taken the same day. Now, when you put them in order, you can see a lot of interesting things. So you can see that those 2 photos are directly linked. It's a panoramic photo, which says a lot on the way the photographer was seeing the victims, because by that time, when you were doing panoramic shots, it was linked directly in photo history to industrial photos. That's the way you deal with factories when you want to show factories and what's produced in factories. For the SS, that's exactly the same thing. He's doing panoramic photos to show how they are dealing with their product, Jews. And now there's another major thing. That's the order of the photos, the first one being 62, the last one 61. But there's a major problem. Those people are supposed to walk, and you can see the gas chamber on the end of the photo. They're supposed to walk there. So why are they facing us? Why? Because the photographer gave them an order to stop, to turn around, to watch him, and you can see the results. Some are smiling, which doesn't mean pleasure. It's just something automatic in our societies. Also are showing fear, whatever. They're watching him, and then once the photos are done, he sends them to the death. So we don't think about all this when we watch those pictures. We think about the victims, which is, normal, but we don't think that those photos are staged by the SS. First, every single photo is staged by the angle, the frame, whatever. When we take a picture, any kind of picture, we frame it. It's framed, it's staged, And it doesn't show the way the procedures are going on in Auschwitz. The Jews are not stopping on the ramp, going to the gas chamber and looking at us, usually. They're looking at us because a photographer, an SS photographer, made them stop and look at us. Now, how could we date? And probably other people in the future will find other ways. So here you can see two of those photos, and we see what's on the foreground. I mean, we have no interest on the stupid wagons on the background, and even less interest on the stupid numbers on those wagons. Except that when we went to the Auschwitz Museum archives, we found documents about the construction of the railway station, the ramp. You can see the Tagbericht daily report. So on the 19th of May, 1944, there are plenty of very useful information that we used in that excellent book we published. But here, there's something very important. Stupid wagons with stupid numbers. But the daily report is stating that on this 19th of May, 1944, the wagon SN number 5823 was registered on the ramp, and same thing with the Breslau 32918. So thanks to that document, we know that photo was taken on the 19th of May, 1944, because that's the only day those wagons were registered on those daily reports. And we checked the daily report on 3 months. So you can see how many information you have to use to find the date of a photo. But that's something important. Obviously, we don't think about photos. When we deal with text, even antique text, we are always trying to put a date on them. That's the basis of historical work. On photos, we don't care about them. Just watch in museums. I'm not speaking about books or newspapers. In museums, how many photos, not only about the Holocaust or the Second World War, are properly dated with proper captions and authors. Often you have no information. It's totally not normal in history when you deal with documents, because a photo is a document. I could state a lot of interesting things, but I'll show you other people we could link through the photos. So you can see men that were selected for work. And basically, on the 19th of May, 1944, you can see that 19 photos were taken, 2 during the selection on the center of the ramp, 12 of men and women being sent to the 2 main gas chambers, 2 and 3, which are connected to the ramp, and 5 photos of selected men walking to the camp. And that's the Lagerstrasse. That's the way you take to enter the camp itself. Now, the last thing, when you map that, you can see there are almost 900 meters between the 12 photos and the 5 others. It's impossible that the same photographer stood at the center of the ramp, then went 400 meters up and came back to photograph the selected men, which means that there were 2 photographers operating in parallel, and that fits perfectly because there were 2 SS photographers that dealt with the photos of the album. We know that thanks to the so-called Auschwitz trial in Frankfurt in 63, 65. Since that date, we know 2 photographers. We have the name, Hoffman and Walter, took the pictures. And here you can see that the 2 were working on that transport. On other transports, it's one or the other. Here, it's clearly 2. Now, to go back to the analysis of the photos, and I'll go on quickly because I think I have 5 minutes. Yeah, I have 5, 10, 20, 10. Okay, let's make it 20 then. No, I just to show you again, I mean, it's exactly like the Warsaw Ghetto Boy. We don't see what the there is to see. First, you can see prisoners, which is important. Those are concentration camps prisoners. They know what's going on. Now, you can see them just, sitting on a bench. We are in a concentration camp. It's not normal. It's not a leisure camp. Why are they sitting on the bench? Because every single time, and it's written on the Tagbericht I showed you, every single time a so-called transport of Jews, entered on the railway station, all the prisoners working on the construction work of the station or of the camp, because you have ongoing works all over Birkenau, were sent back to their camps. So those men you see were working either on the railway station or other parts of the camps, and they were ordered to go back inside the camp. And again, a tongue. We found half a dozen tongues in the Auschwitz album, defiance to the SS photographer. It's just in front of us. And this is resistance. And so that you can see a woman holding a tissue to her nose. She could be sick. It's a possibility. And she's using a tissue. But we found plenty of women using tissues on the photos. We are in May 1944. There's no COVID then. So if you have so many people using tissues, it's because it stinks. Here you can see the odor in Birkenau because this woman is holding a tissue to her nose. Now, let's go to another topic. I'm almost done with that, so don't fear. I'm not going to use the 20 minutes, only 15. There are 30 or so photos showing luggage in Canada 1. This is Canada 1, which is near Auschwitz 1, and Canada 2, which is in Birkenau. And this part is the last part we dealt with when we had to finish the book. Basically, I was told, deal with that because we have to finish the book now. We had no interest. Bags, luggage, what else to find it? So that's when I understood how stupid I was, which I knew before, but now it was sure I was clearly stupid because I thought, okay, we have 30 or so photos showing luggage. So what? So what, if you compare those two photos, I'll go back to this one, there's a major difference. Here you have luggage, right? You don't have a single luggage here. You have only clothes. It means, and you can see how stupid we were when we thought there was nothing interesting to say about those photos. This is coming directly from a gas chamber. This is coming from the ramp, and I cannot state anything except those are the belongings of Jews that were sent to Auschwitz. But I cannot tell you they were all killed, because some of them were selected and they were registered as prisoners. This is the killing of the Jews in Auschwitz. What you see there was brought from one of the gas chambers. And that's it. Here you can see the killing. Now, if you look at those two photos, obviously there's so many things to show. I'll just show you a few of them. You can see that above the door, there's a light, right? You can see it. It's during the day, so the light is switched, but you have a light above the door. And if I go back to this one, you can see a spotlight also there on the mast, right? Why? If you read the testimonies of the survivors from the two Canadas explaining it, we were working 12 hours a day by shift. There was the day shift and the night shift, day and night. That's why you have light. And you see the light. It's switched because The photo is taken during day, obviously, but you can see on this photo that they were working day and night, and that's the reason you need lights. Now you can see this man holding some kind of sheet, and it's important. And you can see those men coming from the Canada Commando, just taking out the clothes and the shoes. And this photo, which is the next one, is kind of full of information. You can see a woman with hair. It's important. It means she's a capo. And you can see the triangle, probably a red one, but as it's in black and white, we cannot be sure. Why do we see a woman? It's very important. Every single prisoner working in the Canada is a woman. We don't see them because they're working inside the barracks. But thanks to that capo on that photo, it reminds us who was working there. So you can see that capo, you can see that the sheet the guy was holding on the photo there is now on the ground. Why? Because he and another guy are taking away the few shoes that got mixed with the clothes. And I'll go back again. You can see that he started to take out the few shoes that were mixed with the clothes. Sorry. So they're putting the shoes on this sheet, and the others are taking all the clothes inside the barrack where you have a selection, etc., etc. Last thing, you can see the wheelchair, which is gigantic, probably 1.50 meters long, something like that. And that's the true essence of the Holocaust. Some Jewish man or woman in Hungary, in France, wherever in Europe, was taken, put into a wagon, sent to Auschwitz, taken from the wagon inside the wheelchair, put on the ramp, and then killed. How, we don't know. Usually disabled people that could not walk were shot in Auschwitz, so killed. And what remains is this wheelchair that crossed Europe to kill the owner. That's the Holocaust. And the machinery in Auschwitz, it was probably sent back to Germany. So now, quickly, and I'm going to end on that and two other photos. This is a testimony from Marcel Najari and Odette Varon-Vassar, thank you, said that I worked on a book about Marcel Najari with Loïc Marcoux, Sonderkommando survivor who was from Saloniki and deported from Athens. So finally, I could link the topic to Athens. But in his testimony, he explains one very interesting thing on the 11th of April 1944, when he and the other deportees from Greece arrived in Auschwitz. They were taken from the ramp, not the one you saw in photos. By then it was another ramp. The one where the photos were taken is known as the new ramp. They were taken from the ramp, walked 2-3 kilometers according to him, but that's right. And they were sent to Auschwitz, not Birkenau. Auschwitz 1, where you have the Arbeitsmarkt frei. He explains a few things for those that do not understand French. And I'll go to the point. They were standing on the camp, on a gathering place, on the Appelplatz. And then SS came and took photos of them, which is very unusual. That's the only testimony I know speaking about photos taken on the arrival day in Auschwitz. When I read that, working on the book, I read other testimonies from survivors from this transport, which is a huge transport, which left Athens on the 3rd of April with 5,000 Jews. And you have half a dozen other testimonies of survivors stating exactly the same thing. They photographed us, especially Jews with Jewish looks according to anti-Semitic tropes. So that's what they are all saying. So sorry, I'll have to go back to the beginning. Exactly this kind of photo. We are in April 1944. This album was made starting in May 1944. There are chances that the photo session that Marcel Najari and the Greeks were submitted to is a full project linked to the album. I have not a single proof to state that, but it's very bizarre that the only time in testimonies from 1940 to 1944, when prisoners are explaining that after the selection they were photographed, not the usual concentration camp photos, which are classic, but photographed this way, happens 1 month before the start of this operation. And once the photos are taken, they are all sent back to Birkenau. Basically, the reason they were taken to Auschwitz was to photograph them, and then they were sent to Birkenau. It makes no sense, except if we agree that the goal, the reason they were sent to Auschwitz, to the Camp 1, was to photograph them. And then they were sent to the usual place. And I'm over. I'm done. So that's the way we display the Holocaust. Perfect. We understand the Holocaust SS victims. There's a major problem here. This is a place nowhere, right? In Birkenau is a shithole, and you don't see anything. You don't see what's going on outside. Those people, okay, there's a problem there, because you're supposed to see another photo, which you will not see. Too bad. There's a glitch from PowerPoint, which is usual, but I think people from Greece will know this photo, or people knowing the Balkans. There's a photo in the Jewish Museum in Thessaloniki where you see Thessalonician Jews walking on the street being taken away and people watching them. We have this kind of photos all over Europe, from France to Poland, from Germany to the Balkans. On those photos, you can see where the Holocaust is taking place. Here in Athens, everywhere, all over Europe. This is only, this photo is the end of the operation. Displaying the Holocaust through those photos is just showing the end, the victim and the perpetrator, while it starts in every single city, town, village in Europe. And it happens during daylight. People are watching, they are knowing the people who are being taken away. This is an Holocaust photo. The Jews from Thessaloniki being taken away. It's an Holocaust photo showing the real way the Holocaust was implemented, what people knew, etc., etc. So I'm sorry, because of Microsoft, you cannot see the photo, but thank you. Thank you.